Hey everybody, so today I'm going to be reviewing Oppenheimer by Christopher Nolan. Oppenheimer follows the life of the father of the atomic bomb, J. Robert Oppenheimer. We watch his life leading up to the dropping of the bomb and the aftermath that follows. This is intercut with a storyline following Louis Strauss, played by Robert Downey Jr., who seems to have a personal vendetta against Oppenheimer. And before I get into it, I want to say I really enjoy Nolan's work. There's no doubt that he has left a pretty big impact on the film industry as a whole. And he's really one of the only directors that we have left that can just sell an entire movie just on his name alone. His work is definitely more high concept, sometimes to its own detriment, where I can't fully connect with the characters in his films. One of my favorites from him is probably Interstellar, because I feel like that film managed to balance, the high concept of the sci-fi genre, but it also manages to make it like a very emotionally engaging movie. And I went into this one hoping it would do something similar, not exactly the same, because I didn't think it would be like as emotional of a story as Interstellar was, but I wanted something that could balance, the high concept nature of this story and also the emotional aspects as well. And I feel like not only did I get that, but I also got a movie that changed the way I think biopics could be made. Before we get into, well, I guess this is related to the film itself, but leading up to the film, there was a lot of promotion about the format that it was filmed in. For those of you guys who don't know, part of this film was shot with 70 millimeter IMAX film cameras, which is it's to this movie what 3D is to Avatar. It's it creates this idea that you haven't really seen the movie until you've seen it in that format. For those of you guys who have no idea what the 70 millimeter IMAX thing means, it pretty much means that there are select sequences in the film that have a taller aspect ratio or taller picture and a higher resolution, and you can only see that if you see it in one of those big IMAX theaters. Now, I don't want to make this too confusing, but I'll try and like make what I'm about to say as easy to understand as I possibly can. But there's different sizes of these IMAX theaters. The one showing it on actual film, and you'll see it if you buy your tickets and it says 70 millimeter IMAX, that will give you the biggest picture and highest quality image. And then there's also smaller IMAX theaters that don't show it on film and give you a slightly less but still taller picture than if you weren't to see it in IMAX. I'll probably find some kind of image that shows you what I'm talking about. And I'm hoping that explains it better than I just did. But I just want to say I haven't had the chance to see this in that big 70 millimeter format, since all the IMAX theaters near me are on the smaller side, but they're still big. I wouldn't say they're small theaters by any means. And ideally what this bigger picture and higher resolution does is that it gives you an immersive effect that you're actually there, similar to the Soarin' ride in Disney. I've seen this film a few times now, every single time in IMAX, and that even though it was in those smaller theaters, or smaller IMAX theaters I should say, it still gives you that same level of immersion, I'm sure to a lesser degree, but the effect is still there. There's exterior shots over Los Alamos or New Mexico that look gorgeous, and sometimes it feels like you're just there flying overhead. The Trinity test where they're testing the bomb is shot in that format, and it's absolutely harrowing. You really see the height of the explosion and just how powerful it is. There's scenes where you're in Oppenheimer's head and you see these visions that he has, and they're all filled with like colorful sparks and waves that are just flying past you. By seeing this film in this format, it just pulls you into the story and transports you into that world. And a lot of these films that are released in these IMAX theaters nowadays are like these action movies or these big budget things. And seeing a movie like this in this format kind of makes it feel a little bit more like a documentary in a weird way. And despite the documentary-esque way that the film tries to pull you into this world, it still feels like a narrative experience. This film is divided into two different timelines that sort of branch off into more timelines, but to keep it simple, it's two different main timelines, one in color and one in black and white. The sequences that are in color are from Oppenheimer's point of view, and they're typically more subjective. I'll get into what I mean by that in a little bit. But the scenes that are shown in black and white are more of a objective view of certain events that are told by the eyes of Louis Strauss. The scenes in color are told from Oppenheimer's perspective down to what he feels and sees. These are scenes of Oppenheimer's work before and during the work on the atomic bomb, as well as a quote unquote trial he is in following the bombings. I just have to say, Cillian Murphy in this role is fantastic. His eyes just tell you whatever he's feeling. You know, you can just tell what he's thinking by just watching his facial expressions and his especially his eyes. But it's not just it's not just that, but also his voice and the way he stands. He just fully embodies the character of Oppenheimer so well. It doesn't even feel like a performance. It just feels real. You don't see Cillian at all. You just see Oppenheimer. But these sequences that are in color also take kind of a somewhat of an experimental approach. We see his visions that are sort of like insert shot cutaways that can show us like what he's thinking or what he's, how he's visualizing certain theories or something like that. But not only that, there's also, throughout the film, there's sounds of, feet stomping on the ground, or the background behind Oppenheimer will just start to shake like rapidly. And there's also like a presence of like a bright white light that just envelops the screen whenever he's feeling stressed or remembering something, traumatic. And by doing all of this, it really puts us in his shoes and makes us feel what he feels. And I will have to say, this is something that becomes very apparent the first time you hear the feet stomping on the ground, which is within the first like minute of the movie. This movie is fucking loud, especially in a large IMAX theater or some premium format. Now, if you've seen any Christopher Nolan film in theaters, like an Interstellar or a Dunkirk, this should come as no surprise to you at all. And yeah, of course, the Nolan movie's gonna be, it's gonna deaf you for a couple hours afterwards. But I feel like for this one, it does feel a little necessary in order for that effect of stress and anxiety to work. Oppenheimer says early in the film that he's haunted by these visions, and so I guess it being almost overbearingly loud, it does have that startling, almost distressing effect. I should also mention that the score by Ludwig Göransson manages to have this uneasy quality to it that adds to the film's tension. It's always like behind the sounds of the feet stomping or the background shaking, and it just adds to the anxiety that you're already feeling. But the film's score it also works the other way around, because while a lot of the film's pieces add to the film's tension, there's also music in here that add to like a sense of wonder, I would say. A montage set early in the film as Oppenheimer is studying physics is accompanied by an enchanting piece of music that continues to change tempo every few bars, and what that does is that it both adds to the wonder of what's on screen, and it's also reflective of Oppenheimer's own sort of frantic mind. And we can contrast what we just talked about for the sequences that are in color with the sequences that are in black and white. These ones feel more like a quote-unquote standard biopic film, or as standard of a biopic film as this one can feel like. Everything is happening as it would have in real life. And thus, because of that, it's inherently just more quieter and the performances are more subtle. And I would just say Louis Strauss, played by RDJ, as I mentioned earlier, is an absolute highlight. This is one of my favorite performances from him ever. He is so good in this. And there's so many little nuances that he adds to this performance that just make it feel very, very real. He'll like scoff at Oppenheimer for not taking him seriously in a meeting, or like he'll sneer and glare at someone that like questions him about something. And having Strauss as our main character in these black and white sequences, it's sort of reflective of how he sees the world around him. Everything to Strauss is either it's black or white. People are either with him or they're against him. He says kind of early in the film that he believes that all scientists have something against him due to an event regarding Oppenheimer. And so in a sense, when we are in black and white, we are living in Strauss's world, just as much as we are living in Oppenheimer's world in the sequences that are in color. And with having two timelines, it sounds like it would be easy to get confused, or that it feels like we're watching two movies at once that are, fighting for control, especially since, both timelines follow two different characters as their, main point of view. However, the film script does a really good job at balancing the two timelines, and it weaves like this web that connects these two together, and it feels intertwined. Despite both stories happening years apart from each other. The film isn't interested in showing you every part of Oppenheimer's life, it's only interested in showing you the parts that matter in this particular story that's being told, which is great. It trims all the fat, and by only focusing on the main parts of Oppenheimer's life that matter to this story, it manages this film that is juggling a lot. It makes it feel very, very tight. It allows the movie to move at a really, really fast pace. It almost moves at too fast of a pace because there are so many names and events that are being said that it's hard to keep up, and it's hard to keep track of, everything that's happening on a first viewing. I certainly did have that problem, and I can't say that I didn't fully appreciate the film until I saw it a second time around, where I had an easier time grasping what was said and keeping track of all of the events that were going on. But yeah, there's so much important dialogue being thrown at you so quickly for most of the film's runtime, it really forces you to pay attention to what's going on just from the get-go. But by doing so, it makes the transitions between the timelines feel natural and feel smooth. There's something that our characters will be discussing in one timeline, and then it will cut to that event playing out in another, and then, we go back to the other one, and we, see the consequences of it. And by showing the consequences of these events playing out, right then and there, it just slowly builds and builds and builds until we hit the film's third act, where it's all these people like in tight, cramped rooms discussing the fallout from these events. And it kind of feels like both timelines are building up to their own metaphorical explosion in a way, where all of these things come to a head. And I do think that that structure is easily what makes this film so engaging for me as a viewer. How it manages to balance both timelines in a way that makes both of them feel just as important and engaging as one another is a huge accomplishment. The film really changes the game of what a biopic can be, and the fact that it's so successful fills me with a lot of hope for the future of film. This is probably my favorite Nolan film. In many ways, it feels like a culmination of everything he's done until now. While it is dealing with all of these huge ideas about physics and the atomic bomb and all of this, it's a really personal story that leaves you with a horrifying idea of what's to come in our world's future. But yeah, that's my thoughts on Oppenheimer. I really, really do love this movie. I think it's fantastic. If you haven't seen it yet, please go out, please go see it in a theater. That's where it was meant to be seen. I would like to try and do a review for every single Best Picture nominee if I can before the Oscars. I have no clue if that's going to happen because Zone of Interest is still not playing anywhere near me, and I don't know if or ever if it will. But I guess we'll see. I know I can do at least 9 of them, assuming Zone of Interest doesn't start playing. But yeah, I don't know what I'm going to review next, but it'll be one of the 9. Or maybe it won't. It might be a new movie that just came out. But anyways, I'll see you guys in the next one, whatever it is. Bye.